Today I'm going to talk about one of the main subjects in the TV show Sense8, telepathy, and what ways it may be possible to achieve such a connection through the use of empathy and psychedelics. Sense8 is a Netflix original series created by the Wachowskis. Some of their works include Cloud Atlas and The Matrix. This series revolves around 8 individuals from all over the world: Nairobi, Seoul, San Francisco, Mumbai, London, Berlin, Mexico City, and Chicago. They are all conceived at the same moment, and from that point on, they develop a mental and emotional connection. One of the co-creators of the show, J. Michael Straczynski, said about the initial creation,
"We started out at one point talking about how evolution involves creating ever greater circles of empathy. You belong to your family, then you belong to your tribe. Then 2 tribes link up, and now you have empathy for people on this side of the river, and you're against the people on the other side of the river. On and on through villages, cities, states, and nations. So what if a more literal form of empathy could be triggered in 8 individuals around the planet, who suddenly become mentally aware of each other and able to communicate as directly as if they were in the same room? How would they react?"
This makes me think of a possible connection between empathy and panic attacks. The very first few times I ever had a panic attack, I would instantly think that I was feeling this terrible, disgusting, disorienting feeling because my parents or brother had died. The feeling was so overwhelming that was the only thing in my head I could equate it to. Now what if, and this is just a what if, when someone is having a panic attack, they're just connecting with someone on the other side of the world, or close by, or someone they know who is having a terrible moment. With this theory, you are connecting with what they are feeling because for some reason, you are more receptive to it. Our world is hurting. People starving, financial woes, wars, environmental destruction. What if we're just feeling each other? I think this fares well for the positive aspect as well. For example, imagine you are in a crowded auditorium and someone gives a moving speech and everyone claps at the end. Have you ever gotten goosebumps or that weird tingly vibration? A real-world example of this type of connection would be the research involving the Maharishi effect, which is the prediction that if mass amounts of individuals come together to meditate on peace, they can cause positive change in the world. The first major test of this prediction took place in 1978 during Maharishi's Global Ideal Society campaign in 108 countries, and allegedly, globally, the crime rate dropped. There's quite a bit of criticism pertaining to this work, so I think it's just good to have an open mind. Certainly the idea is appealing. The idea of being able to change your surroundings because of a common collective of minds reminds me of Octavia Butler's book from the Patternist series, Mind of My Mind, about a man who is breeding telepaths, but they must be careful. They have to learn how to control their gift and how much they are taking in, and to guard their mind. Similar to what happens between the Sense8 and the Whispers. Now, besides empathy, when watching Sense8, I couldn't help but relate experiences they were having to things I'd experienced under psychedelics. So in my research, I found the field of parapsychology, which is a branch of psychology that researches psi phenomenon, including telepathy. Many parapsychologists have used psychedelics to try to achieve psi phenomenon. Now, there is a difference between an experience and an event, an experience being subjective and an event being objective. W. McGovern was one of the first parapsychologists to research ayahuasca and telepathy, and reported an event where,
curiously enough, certain of the Indians fell into a particularly deep state of trance, in which they possessed what appeared to be telepathic powers. 2 or 3 of the men described in great detail what was going on hundreds of miles away. More extraordinarily still, on this particular evening, the local medicine man told me that the chief of a certain tribe on the faraway Pre-Purana River had suddenly died. I had entered this statement in my diary, and many weeks later we came to this tribe in question, and I had found that his statement had in fact been true in every detail.
There have been a fair amount of events recorded about telepathy and psychedelics, and I urge you to check out MAPS, the Multidisciplinary Association for Psychedelic Studies, which has a database full of research on the subject. Unfortunately, most research stopped on psychedelics in the 1970s for legality reasons and started back up slowly in the 90s, and ever since, research has begun making steady progress, so we could be seeing new developments soon. My LSD experience happened like most others in the United States. It was recreationally in my own home. I had invited a few friends over, a couple who had been going out for quite some time, and I had my significant other. We all took a large quantity, upwards to 10 to 15 hits, and at one point during the trip, we're all sitting in the living room. Me and my partner on one side, the other couples on the other side, and then the guy who had brought us the acid is sitting like in between, in the middle against the wall. And he's saying these random things, and he says some phrase, something about the sun. To this day, I still don't know what exactly he said, but as soon as he said it, I looked at my partner and he looked at me, and the couple across from us looked at each other. Then I looked across at her, he looked at my partner, then I looked at him and he looked at her. And like a whirlwind, we are spun out of this room and into a completely different space. Imagine like a busy city that has, it's being sped up and all these lights are swishing past. We didn't know what was going past us, whether it was humans or cars. So we're all talking to each other, except for none of us are speaking. It's all in our minds. Where are we? How did we get here? What is going on? So are you seeing this? And everyone's like, yes, 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 we are. And just like that, someone said, how do we get out of here? And we were right back in our living room and we're just sitting there. It was a very, very strange experience. This is my experience, but I also experienced this with 3 other people who remember the same thing. In David Luke and Stanley Krippner's article, Psychedelic Science, An Approach to Understanding Exceptional Human Experiences, they came to the conclusion after their research,
perhaps psychedelics evoke profound qualitative shifts rather than just quantitative changes in consciousness. Further, the reported transcendence of space and time may be conducive to a temporal, non-local information transfer. Long-term changes to a person's worldview following the use of psychedelics may also make psi experiences more prevalent. Factors such as one's openness to such experiences seem to be related to the number of ensuing reports. Just as seeing is believing, believing is also seeing. Hence, psychedelics may precipitate a more positive philosophical outlook towards psi, one that leads to its greater occurrence.
Riley, one of the main characters in Sense8, connects with the others initially after their birth through the use of DMT. With a quick Google search, you can find thousands of people's accounts of telepathy through mushrooms, DMT, peyote, and marijuana, to name a few. The site Arrowid has pages of experiences in their vault. So those are my thoughts and research on the show. I fell in love with Sense8 because it made me think so much about people and our connection to each other. Ever since I was young, the idea of having a special ability has always intrigued me. In my research, I'd have to conclude that telepathy is possible. As humans and our ability to adapt and learn new things and overcome obstacles, I don't see telepathy being very far from our reach. What do you think?